regulating is not suppressing. Like, I think the concepts are critical and the practices are critical. So could you give us a couple examples of the concepts that are just core concepts? We started off this way, but
Sure.
And then maybe a few practical tools so that people can start to think about this in the same way that 10 years ago we might have talked about, like, hey, like, you think sleep when you're dead is working for you, but you're actually kind of an idiot when you don't sleep, and you're in a job that requires you to be smart, not an idiot. This kind of thing.
Yeah. I think, firstly, in my book, I have something called the Dealing with Feeling Wheel. And this goes directly to what you're thinking about. When people are dysregulated, when parents are like dealing with a kid, for example, who's dysregulated, they get desperate. Let's take a deep breath. Breathe. No, let's go for a walk. No, let's cook together. No, let's play a game. No, let's do this. And you go crazy. That's not helpful. I'll give you an example for myself. For a couple of months, I have so much work and I have not slept well. The last week, I've prioritized going to bed early. I prioritized like real dark, the darkened room. And I woke up today at 7:30. I was like, oh God, it's a miracle. Like 7:30. It's like, it's the middle of the afternoon. And I feel energized today. I feel, and I'm in a good place. And I have felt that way for like a week now. I recognize I'm building new patterns for my sleep. It's no longer in my wheel a priority. I figured it out. There are some days where I just feel I can't think straight. I'm like all over the place. I realize that I've been maybe on social media too much. I realize I have like 85 things on my to-do list. And I'm like, Marc, you got to go back to your mindfulness work. You need some breath work. You need to just sit around. You need to take that space. You need to get to that hot yoga class. You need to do this. You need this back into your routine. There are other days I sit around and think, so lonely, like I don't talk to anybody anymore. I feel like so whatever. And I'm like, I need connection. I'm desperate for connection. I think that's the way we have to look at it, that there are these components of our well-being that are correlated and are the same as what we do to regulate our emotions. There's the self-awareness piece. Am I at all like paying attention to my emotions right now? There's that breath work piece. There's the cognitive work. There's the relational work. There's the biology of it, the sleep, the nutrition, the physical activity. Like, for example, one of the things that happened for me in writing this new book was that I became very, very committed to my own fitness. Martial arts was like, that was like teaching 10 karate classes a week. I was younger then. I was in the best shape of my life. Then I got like dumpy professor syndrome. I'm like, I'm not getting on that stage looking that way anymore. I was like, whoa. And I made this major commitment. And one of the things that happened to me was that it became my go-to strategy for my overwhelm and stress while writing my book. And I remember saying to myself one day, like, Marc, you may not finish this book, but you're going to be in the best freaking shape of your life. And truthfully, it transformed my life. Now, here's why I'm telling you that story. Because in the conversation with this friend, Marco, who is a trainer, we started having these conversations around fitness identity and how it relates to emotional intelligence identity. And I realized something magical, which is that now at 56, it's been 4 years that I've like done my 4 workouts a week. I mean, I haven't really missed a workout unless I'm like on a vacation, but I'll still do something else. I cannot not exercise. And this morning, just to be, talking about, coming on Huberman Lab, I'm like, I woke up at 7:30. I'm like, I got to get there by this time, but like, I can't work out. I have to work out before I go to Huberman. Like, I can't show up not doing my workout. And I knew I would feel better. I knew I'd be more present. And I did my hour, back workout. But the point I'm really making here is that I identify as a person who exercises. It's like just who I am. My vision for the world is that we cultivate people who identify as well-regulated. Because if you walk into a room thinking to yourself, I got this, nothing you can say can trigger me. I can get through this, or I can manage my emotions. Life is going to be completely different. And that's why I end my book with this concept that people talk a lot about, like be the best self, and everybody's talking about their best selves. But it really does relate to emotion regulation, and there's good research to support it. That you asked me for like a concrete like technique. Well, this is that thing we call the meta moment. And I cultivated this technique with my colleague, Robin. She was a therapist working with patients in New York City. And she's like, I teach them all strategies and then they go home and they yell at each other. And I'm like, I'm a scientist working in schools and everybody's like, this is boring. And then nobody wants to do this. I'm like, the motivation is not there. People don't see the benefit. They don't see that their life is going to be better, going to make better choices, have better relationships, etc. So what's going to make it a difference? Well, as we know, between stimulus and response, there is space. Okay, so what do I do to fill the space? Well, the first step is I got to sense that something's going on. I got to be aware. Wow, that just triggered me. Wow, that was not cool. My automatic habitual response is going to be, who the F do you think you are? Like, don't talk to me that way, or whatever it might be. Marc, who identifies as the most well-regulated person in the whole wide world, the feelings master, the emotional guru, he has a process. He automatically takes the breath. He automatically builds a space. He automatically takes a step back. He does not go on that gut. He says, there's a better way. But that's not enough. So now I have to think about my best version of myself in my role as a husband. How do I want to be seen? How do I want to be talked about? How do I want to be experienced? And my role as a professor and my role as a presenter. Different roles, different selves. And I've helped millions of people engage in this process, by the way. And when you build the space to think about your best self, what it does is it pulls you away from the trigger and it brings you back to your values. And then through the lens of Marc, the director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence, like he's a different dude. He's a totally different guy than Marc, who grew up in New Jersey being bullied and is triggered. Marc, who's a center director, is like Oz, the Yoda of emotional intelligence. Oh, well, how would he respond to this moment? This is a beautiful challenge. I love it. And so my point is that we can do that for ourselves. We can help other people do it. We can do it in a moment. Ideally, we'll do it proactively. So when you go home or when you come into work, you pause, you identify, and you think about the best version of yourself, and you enter in through that lens. My favorite story about this was, we teach this in schools, and this one kid, when people joke about things, they got it. So I'm in this school, and this teacher is like, Marc, this stuff is, it's really funny. I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, this kid was really, really not being kind to someone on the playground, and I called him out on it. And he came over, and I said, I need to know exactly what happened. And the kid said, Mrs. Johnson, I'm going to tell you what happened, but I need you to take a meta moment first. Like the kid knew that if she were looking at what he had done through the best version of herself, she would respond differently. That's the magic of the work.